Multi-instrumentalist, sculptor, archivist, and teacher Nortey confirms that while these attributes continue to make jazz a worthwhile cultural practice, it is the music's call for social justice and its political inclinations that draw him in the most. For Nortey, music, including jazz, is a weapon in the struggle for self-determination and freedom from oppressive powers.
I think you know my name.
Yes. Yes, Nortey.
As to how I got into the music, because purely by chance, I wasn't a cut out musician. I wasn't. But in the course of our living, one chance to music as a more potent force for revolution.
Okay.
So then I became a musician. But then being a musician without a bandsman mentality, you become something else. You are neither a musician or a bandsman. You hover between the intellectual and the activist. The music is a weapon that we use to define the essence of our struggle. So we have to be a musician. Through the influence of jazz as a music form, the African experience in the diaspora, the resilience of it, is potential in redefining the African essence. So I was influenced by that one too, not just the music, but the politics around history. And it made music even more of a relevant thing to be part of, just strictly a category of economist or photographer or politician. It's a viable entity by itself. Can capture the essence of our struggle.
According to Nortey, he developed an interest in culture and political activism while living in the UK as a student in the 1970s. That is where he began to encounter the music of Ornette Coleman, John Coltrane, and Sun Ra.
Well, my first interest in being a musician was to acquire the skills as a saxophone player. And because of the saxophone, then you'll be influenced by so many saxophone players from, say, the 20s up to, say, the 60s. So going into that music material, you chance on the music of the 20s, the saxophones of that time, the music of the 30s, the saxophones of that time, the music of the 40s, the saxophones of that time, 50s, 60s, 90s. And this happened with principally African American, artists who were defining, the essence of those instruments, redefining the speakability of those instruments. So, Coleman Hopkins, for instance, was inspired. In that time, you find a lot of people like Ben Webster and John Byers. So many guys in that time, in the 30s and 40s, then 40s come Charlie Parker, and then a whole genre of musicians from that time. 50s, 60s, then come the Coltrane, Ornette Coleman, and a whole new other musicians. So that influenced me greatly because this music was defined within a political time of the African experience, especially the diaspora. They weren't just musicians and entertainers, but they were defining a new political areas of our music. It was no longer just entertainment, but it was part of how we define ourselves as a community. So the jazz music introduced me to so many of these things. And the jazz musician wasn't just an entertainer. He was also an intellectual. He read books on so many other disciplines beyond the music. So invariably, you say the fun of that musician will inculcate the habit of reading books, knowing about these other areas that your idols also try to get into. So history, philosophy, culture, politics, all these things you become familiar with. And these guys too, the Charlie Parkers and things, they weren't just playing their music, but they understood the political currents of that time. So they knew even the struggles going on in Africa. They knew the Mau Mau in East Africa. They knew of Kwame Nkrumah in the Gold Coast. They knew of Marcus Garvey in the Caribbean.
The free jazz and avant-garde movements that developed from the late 1950s in the US deeply influenced Ninoy's musical practice. The freedom associated with free jazz has inspired Ninoy to seek new sounds and voices that can accurately express and push the bounds of his creativity.
The club defines itself like that. Then you who came into the music as a cultural artist is displaced. Because you're not really an entertainer. You don't go out on Fridays to play beautiful things or go to the club. You've been defined by the whole thing. So you rather play in a community center where you have a chance to influence and define the direction of that music. Whereas when you go into the mainstream jazz club, then they have their prerogatives and priorities. Your creativity is not what they require of them. They want more relaxed music, no intense, screaming. You can bring yourself. The problem also manifested itself also in America. So it wasn't just here in Ghana or Nigeria.
Rethinking the role of community music and pushing the limits of traditionally accepted musical sounds are part of the reasons why Ninoy Nortey invented the Afriphones. These horns are novel instruments that combine parts of African, Asian, and Western European instruments with metal and plastic pipes as well as other household and industrial items. The horns are played with saxophone and clarinet mouthpieces and allow Ninoy to play melodies and scales beyond the Western tuning system.
And I saw this section of the instrument lying on the wet grounds, So I took it home and had it perforated.
Wow.
And then put my saxophone mouthpiece on it. I said, that thing sounds good. And then slowly started developing the bell area. It took a long time to get to this section. But it was a straight, it was a straight, come and let me show you.
Nortey mentions that he is withdrawing from active music performance. His main focus now is developing sustainable archiving projects that will document his own musical collaborations and travels, as well as the broader cultural history of Ghanaian and African diasporic connections.
But for now, what influences me really is the need to document things. So each phase of my own development is documented. Right from the 70s, I've documented things in one way or the other. It's an attempt to say sustain those efforts over the years. But if it's a personal effort, it's not sustainable. You may be doing it all on your own, and you do everything, but you are only one, and there's no institution behind you to steer everything. So when you pass, it's gone. But there's a real need for us to institutionalize these things, where we can memorize. Without documentation, we really don't memorize the history enough to tell anybody what happened before and what's likely to happen. So documentation has been very important. And documentation comes in so many ways, photographs and art, music, those kind of things. It's not just writing for the sake of it, they're writing things to influence subsequent generations. So documentation, for me, documentation has been very basic.
One of the ways to sustain it.
Okay. And also, in documentation, you have to acknowledge also the artists that you operate and work with. They may be individuals, but they also represent collectives. So you work with artists, you work with photographers, you work with poets, you work with people who like the music, you work with everybody, to define that music.